I have a very critical update to share with all of you that involves what's happening right now because we are having a lot of energetic factors converge on our planet and in our near Earth space, the magnetic field that are interacting with the sun, indicating that there may be a very large earthquake soon. So, we are going to dive into all the different energetic factors from things like coronal holes and high-speed streams and solar flare impacts on Earth's magnetic field and how this loads the lithosphere and that can induce earthquakes. And yes, we've had a big earthquake swarm in Iceland, which is very notable. That could be a precursor, but what I want to show you is there's some very anomalous data coming out of Iceland right now. So let me just actually switch over to that at this moment. And we can see here the magnetic field data for this magnetic observatory on Iceland. We can zoom in here, specifically look at it. We have a lot to get into this video, folks. We see the horizontal component right here had about 600 nanotesla dive with this impact that we've had, this geomagnetic storm impact. And this geomagnetic storm that we're having right now is weaker than the one that we had on November 5th. Yet this horizontal decrease in strength, this horizontal component strength decrease in Earth's magnetic field is greater than it was back on the 5th. So that is anomalous. And the horizontal strength is related to strong changes in Earth's plasmasphere, in the ionosphere, and is linked to very large earthquakes. Meanwhile, we are seeing very large energy releases in the Schumann resonances, specifically in that mode 4 band at 25 hertz, which is linked to earthquake activity. So that is one of the factors at play with what I'm talking about. I don't like to necessarily talk, I'm not a doomer or anything, but I want people to be aware of what happens on our planet, and good things happen on our planet, and sometimes crazy natural disasters happen. So it's best to be prepared and to look at these things honestly. So we can look at that earthquake swarm that happened in Iceland. You see all of them stacked here. So quite a lot, 5.1, 5.0. Now, magnitude 5 earthquake isn't terribly large, but what is also interesting is that also on the same mid-Atlantic ridge, we did have this 5.5. That is rare. So while there has been more significant earthquake activity over the past week down here in Indonesia, I mean, this is pretty common. They had a 7.1. This isn't all that unusual, to be honest. The fact that we had this 5.5 on the mid-Atlantic ridge and then this earthquake swarm in Iceland just over the past few days. We can zoom in here and look at the USGS to see the dates and everything. Scroll up to Iceland. I lost it. There it is. And this is right near Reykjavik. I was actually here just a few months ago in this area. 4.8, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. Now, what's notable about this is typically if you have an earthquake, all the aftershocks are one order of magnitude less. So if the main earthquake is a magnitude 6, then the aftershocks will be magnitude 4 and less. But this cluster is all magnitude 4 and 5. So this is kind of indicative of something larger. These could be earthquake precursors. And right now we are also in the midst of a geomagnetic storm. We can see the data here up top. We have the interplanetary magnetic field and we have the KP index right there. And it is at a 5 for the past 3 hours. We see the strong dip in the southward component in red there. And so there has been some big magnetic field changes. We go to the 30-day and we can see that storm on the 5th. Here, the KP went all the way to 7, and the magnetic field strength went all the way to about 40 nanotesla. Now, I gave a warning about that storm with one of my last videos. I did not cover it live because I was busy with the retreat, but we certainly felt those energies energetically there. So very large energetic swing, but you can see that this storm right here is quite a bit weaker in terms of the interplanetary magnetic field strength than this one, yet the data out of Iceland is more significant. So let's look at that Iceland data. We can go here. Just before we do that, though, I want to talk about coronal holes and high-speed streams and giant earthquakes. The reason why, another factor at play here is the fact that we just had 2 coronal holes, and these are linked to giant earthquakes. These giant earthquakes that you see on the map here, magnitude 9.1, 9.1, 8.8, 8.6, 8.6, all of those had coronal holes preceding them in the days and weeks before their rupture. Sometimes even just like that, like just a couple days before, those coronal holes and their high-speed streams were buffeting the Earth. So this is the sun at 193 angstroms from October 24th to the 12th. And just to show you that we had this coronal hole in the northern hemisphere. And then as that rotates out, you'll see the southern hemisphere coronal hole open up. And both of these are basically regions of cooler, less dense plasma. And that gives the magnetic field there an open structure. So the magnetic field has different configurations, open and closed. Open just means it's more connected to the interplanetary magnetic field, which the sun creates. And closed just means it's a little bit more locked up. And so here's the southern hemisphere coronal hole opening up. These open configurations push a lot of plasma ions into the solar wind, the Parker spirals that emanate out, and that buffets all the planets. Now, the Earth at 1 AU is pretty close to the sun. So when these types of coronal holes open up, this is significant. Look how big that is. The Earth really gets buffeted. I mean, it gets hit hard by these things. So it's not like Jupiter. Jupiter's pretty far back. Saturn, all the outer planets, they're way far back. And we actually have some critical planetary geometry at the same time as this. We have a new moon tomorrow. Effectively, it's in play right now. And that is in opposition to Uranus, which is, if we go by astrology, the planet of shakeups and earthquakes. So we have a lot of factors at play that are leading me to believe that there could be some sort of large earthquake event that happens over the next few days. And we see magnetic field anomalies out of Iceland right now. And that is one of the best indicators of where an earthquake will rupture is localized magnetic perturbations. So when these coronal holes, when they open up and buffet the Earth with their high-speed streams, they load the plastosphere with a bunch of solar energy, and that will trigger geomagnetic storms. And this eventually will precipitate down into Earth's atmosphere and then into the lithosphere, and this can trigger earthquakes. And the reason why is because earthquakes, here's a simple diagram: stress load versus time. Earthquakes rupture when the fault passes a critical stress threshold. So critical stress threshold. And when you have more energy being loaded into the lithosphere, you can reach that critical stress faster. Now, these coronal holes, they can continuously load the Earth for a long period of time because, as you saw with that past data graphic for the past couple weeks, it was one and then another. And you see this often at the tail end of a solar cycle, but we're seeing it now during the kind of the beginning of solar maximum for solar cycle 25. So the stress load is variable. Sometimes the earthquake will rupture at a lower stress load than other times, but in general, the more stress you have coming in and the closer a fault is to its stress threshold, then you have that earthquake. So it's fairly simple. If you zoom out and look at it, very simple equation. By the way, so we're going to talk about Earth's magnetic field now. By the way, if you want to get the complete understanding of Earth's magnetic field, I have a master guide. It's 2 hours long that goes into basically everything on Earth's magnetic field, about the basics and then all the different variations it has across time, from pulsations to jerks to excursions to pole flips. So if you want to watch these videos and have a better understanding of what I'm talking about in regards to Earth's magnetic field, then I suggest that you watch this guide, and you can get access to it by becoming a special member of my channel. You can sign up just by going to my channel page and clicking join. It's $5.99 a month, I believe. And there's other perks to that too. So I hope you join as a special member. And there'll be other videos and courses and things I'll launch for special members with time. Or you can get it as a standalone video for $5.95 on Gumroad. Link in the video description or at the top of the chat. So just an FYI, if you want to understand this stuff, I've created this info for you. And I made it paid because it wouldn't do well on YouTube. And I want this to really... those are really interested in this, it's available for you. So this is probably the best resource on Earth's magnetic field that you can find. So here's the data out of Iceland, the magnetic field data. So what we're looking at in the green is the horizontal field strength, which is for this graphic right there, 12,800 nanotesla. And then the vertical is 50,350 nanotesla. So combined, you get the total field strength, which isn't represented on this graphic here. Here's November 3rd. Here's November 4th. And by the way, I see everyone in the chat, so we'll be doing a Q&A later. So yeah, I'm happy to do that. But I can't read the comments right now so much because I'm going through the data. So here's the 3rd. Here's the 4th. Here is the kind of like a little bit of a pre-magnetic field fluctuation before that big storm on the 5th. If I go over the next one, you'll see it here. This is what happened on the 5th. Now, here we have the magnetic field strength horizontal, 12,790, and we see that the scale range is 500 nanotesla. We see that this dropped from its median to, it had about a little bit more than a 500 nanotesla swing, and that was with that storm that had the KP spike of 7 from the pretty large event. I mean, there was a lot happening. There was the big coronal hole high-speed stream that impacted the Earth on the 5th, along with some other effects. So you see what happened there, and then we see again, there was even another depression there of about negative 500 nanotesla. But we are seeing a even stronger decrease in the horizontal field strength, or at least we just saw a stronger decrease in the horizontal field strength from a lesser geomagnetic field impact on Iceland. So that's indicative of something weird happening to the magnetic field near Iceland. We can scroll forward. Here's the 7th. Here's the 8th. We see things start to stabilize out. Again, some other swings, not as dramatic, not as long in terms of time duration. And then here's the 9th. Here's the 10th. Here's the 11th. And here's the 12th. So things have been quiet recently. But if I go back again, then we can look at this data, and there we just had that big drop in the horizontal intensity. And here's the other thing. Look at the change in the degree. It was a 2.5, a 2 degree change, about a 2 degree change, 1.5, 2 degree change. If you go from there, it's a 2 degree change. And if we go back to our data, let's go back to that storm. If we look at our degree, here's negative 9.4, and it's a 2 degree scale. So this whole thing right there would be 2 degrees. This did not even shift 2 degrees on the 5th, and we saw a bigger shift in the magnetic field direction at Iceland just like in the past couple hours. So that's why I'm doing this live stream so late. I know it's late for some of you, or early if you're in Europe, but I wanted to do this as it's happening because that's important. So, yeah, what happens with these geomagnetic storms and these big influxes of energy from these coronal holes and these high-speed streams is that you get ion precipitation. And this is where there's a lot of evidence suggesting that these strong ion precipitation events, they can also be thought of as electron burst. That's another key word for you. Is that when you have a lot of electrons being deposited from the radiation belts into the ionosphere, it radically changes the ionospheric currents. And that is connected to the lithosphere. So the ionosphere at 50, 100, 500, 1,000 kilometers up, is connected electrically to Earth's ground surface, and any electric currents in the ionosphere also induce electric currents in the lithosphere. So during these geomagnetic storms, you get very, very strong ionospheric currents that form, and those telluric currents that are then induced in the lithosphere have the potential to trigger an earthquake by overloading a fault at a critical stress threshold. So here are our radiation belts to give you all the factors at play, and you'll see that after that past loading of the geomagnetic storm and the coronal high-speed stream, right there, you see how red it is? The radiation belts are loaded, and they just started to get squeezed a little bit by the space weather that we've been having. But let's go back here. Look at that. They are probably the darkest red I've seen them in this type of graphic and maybe ever, but they are supercharged right now. Or at least they were just on the 10th and the 11th and going into the 12th. Now they're starting to decharge a little bit, but they're still heavily charged. So the radiation belts are loaded with energy, and if that gets precipitated downwards rapidly in what's known as these electron bursts, then that could potentially be what causes that earthquake rupture. And there's been enough lithospheric loading that potentially it's a great earthquake. And I don't know if it's going to be Iceland or somewhere else. I don't know if there is going to be an earthquake. It's just the factors are aligned. So it is most responsible of me to mention this to anyone that follows my channel, etc. It would be irresponsible for me to do otherwise. That's at least what I believe. So here we have just a little bit of a connection I'm going to make between the ionosphere, the Schumann resonances, and earthquakes. We're going to look at the planetary geometry too, and talk about how that's influencing and being another one of those factors that's coinciding. But if we look at the ionosphere, we see that it splits into day and night regions. So it expands during the day. It's charged up more during the night. It's reduced in its plasma density and its energy. And the Schumann resonances are a result of the ionosphere. This is the global electric circuit. And the... one moment. Okay. The global electric circuit is a very large process on our planet that creates the Schumann resonances and drives telluric currents in the ionosphere and in the lithosphere. And it's what connects effectively our plastosphere to the near-Earth environment that we live in, like the lower atmosphere, etc., drives storms and lightning and all that good stuff. So that gets altered heavily by these geomagnetic storms. That changes the Schumann resonances. And we see big changes in the Schumann resonances during earthquakes, often before earthquakes. They are often a pre-earthquake signal. So, for example, when you get 20 to 25 hertz energy, really about 15 to 30 hertz energy increasing in power, that is often a sign that an earthquake is about to rupture. Now, it's not always the case, but there has been a lot of observational studies looking at the connection between 20, 25 hertz energy in the Schumann resonances and earthquakes. This is linked to the ionosphere. When you have these strong ionospheric disturbances, you often see these big increases in the Schumann resonances, specifically modes 3 and 4 at 20 through 25 hertz. But really, it's more like 15 to 30 hertz. And one example of this is right here. We see the quality factor went to 120. We'll look at some Schumann resonances data in just a little bit. But when we get big enhancements in the energy here, then that is a sign of potentially an earthquake. Now, let's look at the past almost 2 weeks of data here from the, I guess the past week of data. Here's November 4th right there. Here's mode 4. This is what I want you to be looking at, this part of the data, okay? We can see mode 1 there, 7.8 hertz. Here's some geomagnetic pulsations. This was a big pre-earthquake signal right there. This, if you know how to read this data, is very anomalous. You see this hyperbola there. You see this big enhancement of energy there in mode 4, going across for multiple hours there. Enhancement in mode 3, more enhancement in mode 4 here, little bursts, more bursts in mode 3. This is all the earthquake band. Again, mode 3, mode 4. This is on the 8th of August. This is the vertical electric field, 0 to 40 hertz out of Tomsk, Russia, UTC +7. Here we have more enhancement of the Schumann resonances in the background electromagnetic field at frequencies associated with earthquakes. Yeah, the energy has been super intense over the past few days. So we're seeing just really big enhancements in mode 4 of the Schumann resonances over and over. And if we look specifically for the past few days, here's the 11th, the 1111 portal. And we look at right now, and we'll go to the live data stream in just a second, but look at this really rapid enhancement and continuous enhancement of mode 4 there. And that continues all the way on. So it's become it's become more frequent. We had these kind of isolated incidents. It's become more frequent. Now we can look at the amplitude data, and we'll see that at times over this record, the amplitudes for mode 4 have been stronger than they have been for the lower modes, which typically have more power in them. So here, mode 4, 10.9 for the amplitude at the max. Mode 3 at 20 was 11.5. So it was nearly as strong as mode 3. But then if we go forward in time, amplitude for mode 3 at 20 hertz, 5.7, but mode 4, 15. So nearly, it had amplitude heights 5 times higher, specifically right here, than mode 4 did. Amplitude high for mode 2, 7.4. So that is highly anomalous. It even had an amplitude high stronger than mode 1 at this moment in time. So very, very, very unusual. Now with this burst that we had here, that is very significant. You can see the nice enhancement across all the modes for about, what is that, 10 hours. This whole thing is like 10 hours long, just happened. We see that mode 1 went to 41 in amplitude. Mode 4 went to 28. Mode 2 only went to 27. Typically, this is a much greater difference between them. Mode 4 is usually the weakest by far. And look at mode 4. It's a wider enhancement in the power, whereas mode 1 peaked and then quickly dropped off. Mode 4 has stayed elevated. Even here under the curve, you see it's higher. Mode 3 had an amplitude high of 15, so a big difference. I mean, mode 4 and mode 1 are the strongest for this burst right there. And we really see that come clean with this data. If we look at the quality factors, something really odd shows up. We see that the quality factors for mode 2 are greatly enhanced. And the last time we saw quality factors this high for any of the modes, we had a very large earthquake out of Turkey. So we can look at that data really quick. We actually had some very odd pre-earthquake signals. You see them right here. So we haven't been seeing these parabola shapes. We've been seeing more like these lines in the data. And they also had these echo reflections. But we saw these on the 2nd of February. And then there was also lunar geometry at play. There was a full moon. And the day afterwards, we had this earthquake, and you see that big energy stream right there, 7.8 earthquake. That's lined up precisely, and you can see 24 hertz. It went all the way through that band. So that's what I'm talking about. And if we look here, we had big quality spikes. Mode 4, 59. Mode 3, 250, preceding this event by 4 days. So we're seeing big quality spikes in mode 2, which is a little odd, but still mode 4, 31. Now, typically when you look at the qualities for mode 4, it's just like these quick spikes up and then it goes back nearly to 0, like baseline. But you see how it's been building and building and building. Quality is a measure of the energy in the system now compared to the historic average. It's a percentage. It's a little complicated. But you can just think of it like, what is the energy of mode 4 right now or mode 2 right now compared to what it normally is? Whereas these amplitudes are relative to each other in the moment. They're not related to the past data. qualities are. So we see the qualities for mode 1, 26. That's actually quite high too for mode 1. 18 for mode 3 is about normal, but really high qualities for mode 2 and even pretty elevated qualities for mode 4. So yeah, some big indications of imminent earthquake activity in the Schumann resonances. And I don't think it's related to that 7.1 or any of those high magnitude earthquakes we've had in Indonesia, because we're seeing this enhancement of the energy right now. Sorry about that. We're seeing this enhancement of the energy right there, right now. So here is one of the factors at play, which is, again, there's so many factors. Here we have the new moon, and I'm sorry you don't understand any of it. I do my best to make this simple, but it's complicated stuff. I do it better than most scientists. They would just have you completely lost. The new moon is positioned right now in front of the Earth, in between the Earth and the sun, and this will affect the interplanetary magnetic field. It creates these perturbations that you can see here. So there's regions of low noise, and then you see these noisy regions outside. And so you can see there's an elevation in the magnetic field strength, the interplanetary magnetic field. You see that elevation in the interplanetary magnetic field with that lunar wake, and then it decreases outside the lunar wake again. So we do have this at play. The maximum disruptions are 5 to 10 nanotesla in strength, and we can see what this does to proton density. You can see that there's a proton void there, and then you can see there's an electron void on the dark side of the moon. We can't see the moon when it's a new moon because it's totally, it's just totally dark due to its geometry. But this changes the interplanetary magnetic field. It creates these alterations in the plasma of the IMF. And if there are strong plasma structures, enhanced plasma ion densities and stuff in the IMF, then the moonbeam position right in front of the Earth can have some significant effects. Again, 5 to 10 nanotesla in strength. And that could be the final energetic load that tips things over. So let's go back to our data here, and let's just refresh this really quick just to see what's happening. And yeah, so there's that storm there. We can zoom in specifically here, and we see that we have this big decrease in the southward component. That is what happens when you get strong energetic inflows into Earth's magnetic field. And the strength is about 11 nanotesla. So this isn't really that strong. And that's why I think these anomalies out of Iceland are more significant than I would normally give them, because a huge change in the degree and a huge decrease in the horizontal intensity. And these two right here are specifically linked to earthquake activity if you read the historical research. I'll put that DOI in the video description. I haven't put it in yet. I'll put it in once the live stream is over. Let's refresh our Schumann data here. That's what's coming in right now, folks, out of Tomsk, Russia. So big increases in the Schumann resonances. And you can see the enhancement of mode 3 here, and then mode 4 right there, and it's only been increasing more. So look at this increase right there, the amplitude increase. Just, it's such a slow, like constant, almost exponential energy increase now. Amplitude for mode 4, maybe I can zoom in on this for y'all. Amplitude for mode 4, 28, whereas mode 1 there is 41. But if we look at the amplitude specifically right here, that's about 12. It's at 12 right now. And mode 1 is just under 18. So they're pretty close in strength. Mode 3 is almost at its high. It's at 12 as well. So mode 4 and mode 3 are equivalent right now in amplitude. Mode 2 is at 11. Both of these are stronger than mode 2 at this moment in time. That's a classic pre-earthquake signal. If we look at the frequencies, we see that the frequencies have actually spiked for mode 1 here all the way to 8.6. That's also odd because you typically get a frequency decrease when you have these solar energetic events and these geomagnetic storms. So you do see this drop right there. It wasn't dramatic, but then a strong spike to the higher frequencies. Meanwhile, look at the frequency for mode 3. Big drop. Same for mode 4. It's at a low. So we're seeing a divergence. Mode 1 is increasing in frequency to 8.6. And mode 3 at 20 hertz and mode 4 at 25 hertz is decreasing in frequency at this moment. Here are the quality factors. You see this big increase in the qualities for mode 3. Again, you can see mode 4 is staying elevated in its qualities. It's not at 31 right now. It's at about 20.6 at this moment. Mode 1 is kicking up a little bit. Still, the qualities for mode 4 are higher than mode 1 at this moment. Mode 2, the only reason it looks so low is because it was having these quality spikes to 120. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to see why it was spiking so high in the data. But you can see, I mean, it was elevated to 120 for significant lengths of time. And we're also seeing odd Schumann resonances data out of other places as well. I didn't want to have this video go too long, so I didn't pull them up. But you can look at the data from France, from VLF.IT. There's some odd little burst in the 25 hertz band there at this moment in time. There's some geomagnetic pulsations from the 7th, I believe, that you can look at in the sub 10 hertz range. So a lot of factors at play right now. We can look, let's see what our proton flux looks like. Proton flux is flat, so we are not in the middle of a solar radiation storm, but we did have a minor solar radiation storm earlier on the 9th, the 10th, and into the 11th. And that is also related to, basically that's just loading the plastosphere with even more energy. And the reason why is because protons are 1,800 times heavier than an electron. So when you get an enhancement of proton flux, it's significant. And it significantly alters Earth's ring current. And that is one of the main flows of energy in the plastosphere that alters Earth's magnetic field. And it's when you get disturbed, really disturbed magnetosphere conditions that you get these earthquake events. So we'll see if we have a large earthquake here out of Iceland. That's just, I'm just kind of following intuition a little bit on that, but it could be anywhere on the globe. Let's look at the planetary geometry. Here is for tomorrow. So this is just less than 24 hours away. We have the Earth here, and then, is this full screen? There we go. We have the Earth, and then we have the Moon in this new moon arrangement. You can see it right there. So the Moon, Earth, Moon, and Sun are aligned. This time isn't exactly for the new moon, but it's close enough. But what you see is that Mars is at its opposite to the Earth with the Sun in the middle. You actually even have Ceres joining in on this opposition. But then far off in the distance, there's Uranus. So we have a pretty large, especially with Mars there. Ceres is a little bit of an extra. You have a pretty large opposition right now between Mars, the Sun, the Moon, Earth, and Uranus. And Uranus is linked to earthquake activity. And Mars is, it's like, this big energy loader. So some pretty powerful planetary geometry here. We have Neptune at a trine, and Neptune is historically linked to earthquakes, like classic Greek mythology. He just took over the seas, if you read into Greek mythology. But yeah, some very powerful planetary geometry at the same time. So we have the planetary geometry. We have pre-earthquake signals in the Schumann resonances. We have magnetic field fluctuations that are highly anomalous out of Iceland. We had 2 coronal holes back to back that continuously loaded Earth's plastosphere with a bunch of solar energy. We had a solar radiation storm. There's a lot that's been happening. And so that all just effectively whether there's an earthquake or not is telling the story of how the Earth is being heavily charged right now. And what's notable is that it's happening in the higher frequencies. So whether or not there's an earthquake, bioelectrically, this is connected to beta waves, high beta waves. Let's go back to the Schumann graphic. And so this could be also thought of in terms of brainwave activity, in terms of autonomic nervous system activity, in terms of heart rhythms. And this enhancement here in 20 hertz and 25 hertz. And we're even seeing enhancements now in mode 3, 33 hertz. This is all connected to those higher frequency rhythms. So that can be very stressful to the body. That could be activating the sympathetic nervous system and those that are bioelectrically sensitive to a degree beyond normal. That could be stressful. That could be activating the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which triggers the stress response, inflammation, headaches, fatigue, pain. Overactivity could be a symptom of that. But we are seeing enhancements. Look at the enhancement here that we had in mode 1. But in general, there's multiple things at play here. And earthquakes themselves can release energy that interacts with us bioelectrically. So I've experienced that myself personally. The ground surface gets charged during earthquakes. The atmosphere can become more conductive, and that alters physiology. So there's a lot happening right now. I would highly recommend you to practice grounding as possible. If it's cold where you are, it's winter. Well, it's not winter yet, but if it feels like winter, the colder it is, the faster the grounding effect takes place. I have a video on how you can create a do-it-yourself earthing sheet. Don't connect to the wall outlet of a house. That'll just expose you more EMFs. Set up a ground rod, but going outside is best. I'll be making videos on that. But if we just go back to some of this data out of Iceland, this was the 5th there. Really big swings in the magnetic field. And we've been seeing even, similar swings even similar / bigger swings in some of these variables, like the horizontal intensity and then also the degree with a smaller geomagnetic storm. So that is anomalous. And it's really the biggest factor at play with these giant earthquakes are these coronal holes. So yes, we had the Schumann resonances as pre-earthquake signals. Yes, we had the planetary geometry, but it is these coronal holes that really load the Earth with a lot. So a lot at play, and wanted to go over all that for you. Let's do a Q&A. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat. I can see what you're talking about there. It looks like there's been quite an active chat. So not just more earthquakes for Iceland, but eruption is imminent. Yes, there has been evacuations that have been put in place. I was there. Actually, when I was in Iceland, I forgot to mention this. When I was in Iceland in June, they had some very strange changes to their hydrothermal activity. So they had these hydrothermal pools and vents and everything. And some of the pools, which had been stable for years and years and bubbling away and everything, they emptied out the night before I showed up. And the lady's like, hey, the tickets are half off right now because of it. Some of the pools you're not going to see. They were just totally barren. There was some sort of hydrothermal shift that occurred. And she said the last time that happened was like a dozen years earlier, somewhere around that time frame. And it preceded a volcanic eruption and a sequence of earthquakes. So that happened a few months ago, and now we've had this earthquake swarm. These things take time, right? We live in the human time scale, but there's also the geologic time scale. Sometimes they converge, and it looks like that Iceland activity, that was the same location, by the way. Looks like that activity in Iceland has now progressed to an even larger state because we saw that very large earthquake swarm. And remember, those earthquakes were all the same magnitude for the most part, all in that 4 to 5 range. So it wasn't the normal earthquake distribution where you get a very strong earthquake and the others are a magnitude of order of magnitude less or more. It was they're all the same order of magnitude. So that could be indicating magma flows. It could also be like a large pre-earthquake release. It could be just the entire event in general. Iceland is it's on an ocean. It's a hot spot. It's a mantle plume. It's a hot spot on a spreading center. So there's lots of energy coming up from the mantle in Iceland. It's also close to Gokul Caldera and Gokul Ridge, which is another massive supervolcano caldera. And we're having a lot of energy flux going into the northern hemisphere and the Arctic Circle because of these polar cusps that you see there. Ions are funneled down these magnetic field lines to the northern hemisphere. So the northern hemisphere receives much more energy loading than, let's say, the equator. What about Mount Hood? That range up and down west coast. There has been some earthquake activity on the west coast. Really, anything is possible, but we're not seeing, as far as I have seen, any significant like magnetic swings out of that part of the world. I looked at all the magnetic field data. There was a nice overview dashboard, and it was Iceland that had the most anomalous magnetic field swings over the past week. So that's why, and that earthquake swarm leads me to believe that that may be more likely to occur there. But this stuff is so hard to predict. We really need to get more of these observation stations, and I think earthquake prediction is possible, but it's going to be a multifactorial process, and it's going to require machine learning and certain algorithms, and with time and AI, I think that'll be possible. But right now, no one's really up to the task, it seems. And the people that are doing pre-earthquake forecasting, there are a couple venture capital companies. They're scams. So they're doing it just to get some money. Yeah, Mount St. Helens is also seeing some volcanic uplift, and that is pointing to Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens, Iceland, Tajikistan, Indonesia. All these areas are showing that because of solar cycle 25. Let's zoom out. We've been now on a solar loading phase since 2020. December 2019 is when solar cycle 24 ended and solar cycle 25 began. So there's been an increase in energetic loading from the sun into the earth now for almost 4 years. Actually, 4 years come December. And so we typically see with the research, the observational research shows that you get the most earthquakes at the end of solar maximum. But that doesn't mean that it can't start to happen during solar maximum. And as we get closer and closer to the tail end of solar cycle 25, we're going to see those large earthquakes happen because there's been so much energetic loading into the lithosphere and into Earth's different energetic systems. The plastosphere, the ionosphere. So what is odd, though, is that we're seeing these coronal holes right now during a period of time where typically you don't see them. During solar maximum, which we're just entering right now, it seems, you don't get coronal holes. That's when the magnetic field is the most unstable. Typically, you get coronal holes more closer towards solar minimum. So it's very odd that we're seeing them right now. You get coronal holes on the tail end of solar maximum. So yeah, there's some odd things happening with the sun. I think this is kind of a new phase of solar activity that we're going to learn a lot from, and we can't really predict it all that easily. So can an EMP happen naturally, like from a solar flare, an electromagnetic pulse, one to end all electronics? Yes, you could have a Carrington event. End all electronics, that's hard to say. I mean, it would have to be massive for that to occur. But you could have very strong electromagnetic pulses from very strong coronal mass ejections that impact the Earth. And that's going to affect larger technological systems more than it affects small ones. So think power grids versus like your cell phone. That doesn't mean it couldn't affect technology like that, but yeah, that is certainly possible. What is the mechanism for the grand solar minimum 350 to 400 year cycle? That we don't know. We don't have enough data to really qualitatively answer that question yet, but it's basically an indication that there are longer time period rhythms that the sun has. So there's the about 11, 12-year solar cycle, and then yeah, we have these grand solar minimums that occur, and there's also about a 100-year rhythm. If you look at the actually, we can even go to it. Let's go to our our solar cycle data here. Okay, solar cycle progression. We see that actually October had some pretty low sunspot numbers. See that there. But if we zoom out, okay, we're zoomed out now. Sorry for the, okay. Here we have 1750, here's 25. We see this increase in solar activity, then this decrease, then this increase, then this decrease, then this increase, and now we're seeing this decrease again. Now these are not exactly the same wavelength, but we do see this general up, down, up, down. That's not that 300, 400 year cycle. So there's multiple rhythms that the sun has. There's multiple rhythms that Earth's magnetic field has. I go over that in my magnetic field guide that's pinned at the top of the chat. If you really want to understand this stuff, I recommend you purchase that and watch that, or sign up and become a special member. Let's see if there's any other questions here. This is an open Q&A if you didn't hear that the first time. When it comes to the North American craton, do you believe it remains to be total property? I don't understand. I'm sorry. Do you believe when it comes to be the most stable area that has the least amount of activity? Okay. I'm not sure what you mean by most stable. That's a big question I've been thinking about. It's like, kind of, where should I go to live that is the most safest place in terms of geomagnetic activity, in terms of natural disasters and things. But yeah, I mean, North America, the center of North America seismically is not that active. Now, the East Coast has had some earthquakes that are actually been pretty significant, but they're very rare. California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, those are the hot spots. The Caribbean is actually a place of concern too. If you look specifically like Puerto Rico, right now they've been having earthquake swarm for like 2 years. I'm very concerned about Puerto Rico. But in general, I think places like Colorado and the center of the U.S. are safe when it comes to, you're not going to have, the biggest earthquakes there now are induced by oil and gas fracking. Back pain during strong geomagnetic activity, that's possible, specifically also if that is where you're holding any stuck energies and trauma in your biofield, that can manifest as back pain. That's actually very well researched in terms of emotional trauma being correlated to back pain, and that can be triggered and enhanced during increased geomagnetic activity, Schumann bursts, thunderstorms, things of that nature. Anytime environmental energies locally or globally are enhanced, then any areas where your body's holding on to these stagnant energies and trauma, that can be enhanced and be painful. Does the sun create a sine wave on the Earth? I'm not sure what that means, but the Schumann resonances, these are pulsations at 8 hertz, so 8 cycles per second. That's a sine wave. So Schumann resonances can actually be embedded in the solar wind. That frequency can be embedded into solar wind. That plasma can vibrate at that frequency. So when that solar wind, if it has Schumann resonances embedded into it, it can then deposit and enhance Schumann resonances into the plasmasphere as a result. So yeah, I mean, the sun, there's a lot of things that create waves, and the sun is one of them. And any questions? Any last questions for the live stream? I'll do one final conclusion for everybody here, just to kind of, and we'll look at the Schumann. Let's look at the Schumann resonances again, see how they've been updated, because right now they're going nuts. Yeah, here they are, folks, going absolutely bonkers. Such a big cloud of energy too. What's really interesting is that it's like this very wide burst into Schumann resonances. I mean, it's just, and this is not some of the bursts you see are like pure white and they have these very defined edges. That's from thunderstorms. This is very clearly an enhancement of geomagnetic activity. And we're seeing that quickly enter into the Schumann resonances. Often when you get solar flare impacts or these high-speed streams interacting with the Earth, it takes days for that to transition over. So for example, I can show you the Schumann data that we had. Let's look at that really quick. We had that storm on the 5th. Remember that? Here we did see an enhancement of the Schumann resonances in the background electromagnetic field. But in general, after that storm, Schumann resonances were pretty quiet. We had some pulsations, and we had these anomalies in the 20 through 25 hertz band, but we didn't see these big bursts that occurred afterwards. That is sometimes what happens, is that it takes 2, 3, 4 days for the energy to enter into the Schumann resonances. But right now, we're seeing that energy go pretty much instantly with this enhancement of energy from the interplanetary magnetic field. So, do you think California is going to have more quakes? Yeah, it's going to have more quakes. When the big one is going to happen, I don't know. But the Bay Area specifically is not set up well to have a large earthquake. Specifically, Hayward and the Hayward Fault is primed, locked, and loaded, and the ground surface properties like the shear wave velocities of the East Bay, Hayward, Oakland, Fremont are very, very low. They're not stiff. So if there's an earthquake there, it's going to be bad. It's going to be a lot of shaking because it's very loose sediment. That's just the geology there. I mean, I've done those surveys in that area. I have that data online. So what's happening with the sun and moon rising at the same time? That's the new moon. It's, the moon orbits around the Earth, and every 28 days it aligns with the sun, and you'll only see the new moon when it is perfectly aligned with the sun and it creates that solar eclipse. But typically it's off at a little angle, so it's just completely black and you can't see it, but it is basically traveling with the sun right now. So for example, when the sun rises, let's say it's nighttime for you right now, when the sun rises tomorrow, the moon's rising at the same time. Both of them are adding their gravitational energy together. This is called the spring tide. And this is also a very strong factor for earthquakes. When you have these stronger spring tides, that is more significant and correlated very strongly with earthquake activity. So there's multiple factors at play right now. Huge energy burst. How long it'll go for, that is an unknown. Question from Lisa: does any of this have to do with HARP? I'm not far from the Hayward Fault. Conqueror was rolling for 3 months. Okay, well, HARP is interesting. You can read research papers that basically just very clearly talk about how HARP, the ionospheric heaters, directly influence the ionosphere. They cause ion precipitation. They can enhance the Schumann resonances. And so, in theory, HARP does everything required to trigger an earthquake. Now, are the energies of HARP significant enough? Here's what a lot of people get wrong. HARP isn't that strong. HARP or these ionospheric heaters, their strengths compared to something like a lightning bolt aren't that strong. But what they do is they liberate energies in the radiation belts that are very powerful. So it's like a it's like falling dominoes. HARP in many ways could be a small domino tipping over a larger domino. I think in the future we're going to have better evidence showing that we were playing with things that we didn't understand. But when you open up these magnetic ducts through the ionosphere, these are channels of open magnetic field, where these ions can precipitate even further down into the ionosphere than normal. As a result, that will load the lithosphere more with energy. That'll load the atmosphere with more energy. And that can be, you're changing the Earth energies. Look at mode 3 right here. Look at that, everyone. You can even see it enhanced independent of this burst right there. Let's zoom in even more for you all. I mean, mode 3 is super enhanced right now in strength. It's really, really wild. Mode 4 also, look at these frequency lines there. We see 25. That's about 25 hertz right there, but also I'd say that's about 24.5 and maybe 24 right there, or a little less. Let's see what else. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any on the screen at this moment. Heart rhythms noticeably affected in your community, breathing patterns, especially last couple days. Yeah, if any of you have had any of these strong bioelectric symptoms, please comment in the video comments, less so the live stream, so future videos of this live stream can see those. Yeah, there are a lot of particle accelerators too. I know that people will talk about HARP. They'll talk about CERN. I have a video on HARP. I'll put that in the video description after this is over. These particle accelerators also use very strong magnetic fields. Those do dissipate out. They are located underground. So I don't think that CERN or these other particle accelerators affect the Earth too much. But if you're playing with large magnetic fields, you're altering the energetic field overall. So nothing exists in a vacuum. Just because it's deep underground doesn't mean it doesn't affect things. The actual acceleration of the particles, the actual particles being accelerated aren't really doing much. It's all the super high Tesla strength batteries that they use to contain those relativistic ions that they're accelerating, these electrons or protons or whatever, that are creating the huge magnetic fields of those particle accelerators. So yeah, I mean, we need better quality control on this stuff, to be honest. The more you learn about this, the more you see the irresponsibility of these different governments and institutions. For example, like we were already messing with the radiation belts before we even measured them. We don't know what the radiation belts are like in their natural state, because we were inducing ion cyclotron resonance effects in them, basically causing ion precipitation from the radiation belts due to the power grid. 50 and 60 hertz energy has been enhancing the ion flux from the radiation belts down into the ionosphere and below, and that will load the Earth with more energy. That has enhanced thunderstorm activity across the planet, which have then enhanced Schumann resonances across the planet. So yeah, there's a lot happening right now, and we should not underestimate the impact that we're having on our energetic systems. Let's just see if there's anything else. Do you say this was interstellar? That's a good question. I'm going to make a video on this eventually, the interstellar field. We know very little about what's happening outside of our heliosphere. We have the Voyager 2 probes. We have the New Horizons probe. They're just at the edge of the heliosphere. We do have a way of measuring some of the interactions at the heliosphere, the heliopause, due to energetic neutral atoms that we can pick up in our near-Earth environment. But overall, we have very limited data points and locations to measure from. So that's important to recognize. We're only measuring from Earth, and our Voyager probes are, they're old. They're from the 70s. They don't have the best gear. The New Horizons probe is newer, but it's not as far out into the interstellar field. And a lot of the plasma pulses that the Voyagers have been picking up have actually been from very strong coronal mass ejections that were able to push plasma ions outside of the heliosphere into interstellar space, which then got registered by the Voyager probe. So we know very little about the plasma dynamics of interstellar space. There is research showing that in general, currents, like current sheets, you imagine like a large wave, one large wave spanning across space and time. Those often break up into plasmoids. They're more likely to break up into these independent waves. So think of the ocean. When you're standing at the ocean, the beach, do you see one massive wave rolling in, or do you see a whole bunch of waves that are kind of broken up from each other rolling in? You see a whole bunch of broken waves rolling in. That's the physics. Wave physics is very similar, whether it's water or whether it's sound, like in the air, or whether it is electromagnetism. So while you can get these large current waves at times, they're more likely split into independent plasmoids. So I think this current sheet hypothesis of like it causing this massive flip or something to the Earth or the sun, no one's really ever precise when they're talking about it. I think it's flawed because the evidence does not support that, both in terms of observational evidence, also in terms of modeling of like wave modeling and physics. So I hope that answers your question. Super interesting analysis. Thank you so much. You're welcome. What is the frequency of the solar system that travels through the galaxy? Like the solar system frequency. Well, all frequencies are stacked on top of each other. So there's a lot of different frequencies that the Earth has. For example, right here on screen, we're seeing, multiple frequencies that are dominant. 7.8, 14, 20, 24, 33. So there's no real like one single frequency. But we'll understand this stuff better with time. The pi angle shift caused by the heliospheric current sheet proves it. I didn't see what you said before that. Okay, where in America do you believe the ley lines are absolutely the strongest and most noticeable when going to said locations? Extremely, extremely noticeable in the body. I'm a very meditative person. Well, I'm actually like, based on some of these ley line maps that you can find online, I'm actually living on a ley line right now, like a big one. So there's definitely some big energies where I am. I've definitely noticed that. But I'm not the biggest expert in ley lines. Eventually, I will have the magnetic gear to actually explore these. That's going to be a whole new phase on my channel once I get enough funds to buy the magnetometers and then to go to these locations and do the surveys. But based on, I've traveled quite a bit of the U.S. Utah is a very powerful place energetically. I think there's some very strong energies there. I want to put a Schumann resonances monitoring station in Utah for that reason. There could be strong ley lines there. People talk about, where is it in Arizona? The vortexes. I'm totally blanking on it right now. But there are different energetic portals and areas in the United States that are notable. Of course, North America also includes Canada and Mexico, and there are some big energy hotspots in those places as well. Good to see you, DAC or DAC, in the chat. Anyone else? Yeah, Sedona, thank you. Yes, I knew it started with an S. I was just blanking out. I haven't been there yet. I really want to go. So eventually, when I go there, I will make a video on it. And that'll probably be one of the first places I do one of these comprehensive like geophysical analysis survey videos on. It's going to be a very fun episode when I do that. So hopefully soon, hopefully next year, I'll be able to do that and start to make those sort of videos, almost like TV episodes. Okay, so I'd sit close to the Rockies, the east side. A lot of people are looking there for safe places to live. The question of where to live in the United States is a difficult one because everywhere has their drawbacks. stop regurgitating things you read to sound I'm not sure who you're talking to, Harmony. Uh, Earth is not flat. I'm sorry. Sunrise and sunset proves that. Lots of vivid dreams. Yes, I've been having those too, especially if you're earthing. Dreams have been coming in strong. So especially with these planetary geometry arrangements that we get these really powerful powerful energies in the astral realm, or at least you can have, if you want to think about it in terms of more like a scientific perspective, your bioelectric noise in the brain, if your earthing goes down, and then the energetic flux of the environment goes up, and that can trigger these strong dreams. It can enhance theta wave activity, which is connected to REM sleep and dreaming, and it can bring up some of these subconscious energies for your brain to process. So, yeah, with this planetary geometry here, expect perhaps some bioelectric symptoms, whether good or bad. Especially too, we have the solar wind stream buffeting us right now, and we have that big Schumann pulse. So I hope you're all feeling fine. Hope you're all feeling good, healthy. If you need something that helps with that is drinking like dandelion and chamomile tea. If you want the best blend, it'd be dandelion root, chamomile flower, and passion flower leaf. And you can combine all those together into a tea. And that is really good at promoting parasympathetic activity, reducing any overactive sympathetic activity that is happening, which of course we're seeing right now in the Schumann resonances at this very moment. So yoga also helps, moving the energy through your body, breath work, fresh air, deep breathing, meditation, all those things are useful. If you are someone that's like an explorer of consciousness, this is also a good time to perhaps take some psychedelics like psilocybin. There's some new research that just came out a couple months ago showing that when you have magnetic pulses that occur during psilocybin treatment, that enhances very anomalous, chaotic brainwave states. And that is linked to really this connection to these deeper interoceptive signals of the body. This can be old emotional energies, things that have been stored from earlier in your life. So this can, if you feel good and healthy and you have access to this medicine, this could be a good time to do a, let's say like a psilocybin microdose, just FYI. Yeah, not just building a YouTube channel, building an observatory laboratory. I'm actually looking to buy some geophysical gear very soon. So I'll be picking up a 3-axis seismometer. And with that, I'll also be buying a atmospheric electric field gradient measurement probe. And I'll be looking to set that up. Either I'll keep that with me where I travel and take local measurements, or I'll find a location. I have two places I could go to in Utah to get that started. I need to figure out how I'm going to get that data online in real time, but that is actually sooner than later. And then I'm also looking to get turkey tail mushrooms. Yes, that's another good one. Reishi mushroom. And I'm looking to get that data along with magnetic field data and Schumann resonances data and create a geophysical observatory. It's just a question of really money to make that happen. So I have been saving up for that. And yeah, anytime you guys watch a video, that helps me out. So thank you for all your support. It will happen eventually. I don't want to pressure anyone to, this isn't like a donation channel. It's just, it will happen eventually. So just you guys being subscribers helps me. Sharing this video helps me. That's the best thing you can do. Dutch Sense, yeah, earthquake prediction. I've watched a little bit of his stuff. He sounds like a smart guy. I like his talk on wave physics, but I haven't gone through his videos to see how accurate his predictions are. But in general, the way it works is the more you're looking at data, the more you can put together those rhythms and see those patterns. And if this guy's been looking at it for a long time, then he's going to be more accurate than someone else is not. So he's analyzing his stuff on a qualitative level that I was able to tell from some of the stuff that I've seen. And I at some point I should do a podcast with him and look into his stuff more. I just have so much that I'm doing on my own that it's hard to keep up with everybody. And earthquake forecasting, not predictions. He gives you the formula. Well, predictions, forecasting. Yeah, it's like a fine line between the two because we're really, I think probably in this century we'll get really good at that. And of course, there's going to be pioneers in that field that get better at it versus others earlier. So I can't really comment too much on like his level of prediction because when there's so many videos and everything, it's hard to keep a track record of this stuff. I like to look more at like observational correlative trends and then guide my the information that I disseminate based off of that. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all so much for joining. Here's the final Schumann resonances live graphic right here. And we'll look at the data for Iceland right now. Looks like the magnetic field has stabilized, but we did see this dramatic decrease in the horizontal strength, about 600 nanotesla, which is actually a little bit more than that, which is very significant and a very anomalous. More than a 2-degree change in the degree, like the direction of the magnetic field, that is anomalous. Again, also this decrease in the vertical strength. We had the coronal holes of the past 2 weeks. Those are big energy loaders for the plasmasphere and as a result for the ionosphere and lithosphere. So we see that second one right there. That will eventually trigger ion precipitation from the radiation belts, which if you look at right here, were highly, highly, highly charged. We've been seeing very anomalous Schumann resonances activity for the past week in mode 4 and 3. Very high quality factors, 120 for mode 2, an elevated quality factor for mode 4, both highly anomalous. Amplitudes for mode 4 have been higher than for other modes, which typically have higher amplitudes, like mode 2, mode 3. That is anomalous. Seeing similar signatures like these in the recent data. Specifically, if you look here, you can see that outline of a parabola there. Stronger on this side, weaker there, but it's still, you can see how it bleeds. See that? Right there, going all the way down. So that is very reminiscent of what we saw here and there. So there's been a lot of weird stuff happening. And when it comes to earthquakes, it's a pretty simple equation. It's what is a fault at, like where is a fault with its stress threshold? What is the energy load passing over it? And will it take it past a critical stress threshold? So all the chips are lined up effectively. So I felt it was my duty to educate people on these factors and keep people informed as to what may happen. And at the very least, if nothing happens, this is still a very strong energetic event bioelectrically. So we talked about, those types of symptoms like fatigue, pain, problems sleeping, perhaps overactivity, gut health problems. I have a holistic gut health guide that you can purchase that will help you with improving your gut health with things like fasting and dietary modification and other holistic practices. So you can check that out too. I try to build out all the resources possible to make to assist everyone with their health and also in terms of understanding these things. So lastly, again, if you want to better understand Earth's magnetic field and not get kind of fooled by some of the information that's out there, I have the master guide, 2 hours long, that goes over everything from what's happening in the core georeactor theory all the way to mantle magnetohydrodynamics and going into the magnetic field strength and how people, what Earth's magnetic field strength actually is and how it's changed, and then pulsations, jerks, excursions, pole flips, everything. I suggest you check that out. You can also get access to that by becoming a YouTube special member. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in on this live stream. Share this with anyone who you think needs it. Please leave some comments in the video proper. If you like, I will respond to any questions you have there as best as I can. And I'm wishing you all a lot of light and love and health and just good vibes all around. Enjoy the new moon tomorrow. It's a very powerful time to get out of a rut and to shake things up as you want. If you want to make a big change in your life, the moon opposite Uranus is a great time to do that. So there's a lot of power, and with Mars also in conjunction with the sun. So the universe is smiling upon anyone that wants to make beneficial changes. So peace, love, blessings to all of you. So grateful for everyone that has subscribed to my channel, everyone that watches my videos, supports me. You are just the absolute best audience and so supportive and loving. I couldn't ask for more. And I'm just happy that all of you are here with me, that we're here together, and that this community has formed. And I'm really, truly blessed. And I think my last video, my second last video that I released really demonstrates that very strongly and nicely. So yeah, just feeling really, really grateful. And I'll fill you in more about my Costa Rica trip. It was incredible. But yes, we're going over now. Peace, love, everything. And I'll see you in the next video.